So, hello, Mr. Vishwas Bhisey, and welcome to Oddballs and Outcasts. And I'm so curious about learning everything about planes and the fact that you have a fleet of your own and a flying school of your own. I'm sure we're going to have great conversations. So, why don't you start off by telling me how it all began for you?
Yeah, thanks, Pranav, for having me here today. Yeah, I've always been crazy about flying. I remember even from when I was a kid. Uh,
You can lean into the
in
camera
the
a bit.
ni- oh,
Yeah,
when I was a
into the
kid,
mic.
my dad used to ask me, "Where do you want me to take you?" And it was always the airport to see aircraft take off and land. So that's it. And when I was in college, actually, I did some gliding at the Hadapsar Gliding Center. I got my license in 1984 or 85. I don't exactly remember now. After that, I did some hang gliding between 1993 to 1995. Then there was a big break from 95 to 2006, uh, when one of my friends who was instructor in the Air Force, he asked me to come to the Hindon Air Base where he was teaching NCC cadets how to fly. So he took me up for a joyride, and then it really again hit me with a bang. So the bug was there, but it was dormant, and it just it resurfaced. So after that, I started flying at Carver Aviation, and I really never looked back.
Hmm.
So first, I had bought a small microlight aircraft, but the transfer really didn't go through, and the bureaucracy involved in flying is quite a bit compared to any other place in the world.
Like, in what way?
The maintenance of the aircraft, the keeping of a license, just to keep an organization. It's not just that you go out and buy an aircraft. A lot of people today can afford to do,
Yeah.
but really the paperwork is a lot. If you wanted to buy an aircraft in India, if you had to import one, it would probably take you at least a year and a half, which overseas it's or any in the US or whatever is probably just a few days.
Okay.
Here you have to jump through a lot of hoops. You need to get a special permission from the Intelligence Bureau. There's a Home Department inquiry. You need to get this is what they call the security clearance. Then you need to go to the DG, the Director General of Foreign Trade, to get an import permit. Then you have to get your aircraft certified in India before it can be imported. A whole lot of things.
Okay.
So it's always easier to get an aircraft that is already in India, which belongs to a flying school, rather than just start the whole process afresh. That said, we've got at least two of our three aircraft from overseas. So we imported them. So we have been through the procedure, but it's not easy.
So in 2006, you said the bug is what came back.
That's right.
When
Yeah.
you went with your friend, that was on his aircraft.
Yes, it was on the Air Force, one of the Air Force microlight aircraft. Yeah.
Okay, and by then were you already certified, or that's when you
No,
started?
that's when I started. That's when I started. Then I was looking for a place where I could learn. Uh, Now, obviously, the guy that I bought the aircraft from, that he was in Bangalore. So I would have had to go and live in Bangalore to finish my training. Then I heard about Carver Aviation. Well, I knew about Carver Aviation earlier also, which was situated in Baramati, but I had not been to them for a while. So in 2000, late 2006, early 2007, I decided to go to them and ask them if they could help me out in any way. The owner of Carver Aviation was a guy called Mark Carvalho. Very, very nice guy, and he was very cooperative, very helpful. But what he suggested was that you go in for a private pilot license instead of a microlight pilot license.
What are the differences?
Microlight pilot license allows you to fly an aircraft up to 450 kilos only,
Okay.
whereas private pilot license will allow you to fly any aircraft up to 5,700 kilos with the appropriate rating. So it's considered as a higher level license, and this is what they teach all the cadets there, including for commercial aviation, for somebody who wants to get a commercial pilot license. The flying training is practically the same. Obviously, for a commercial pilot license, it's a lot more rigorous. So in 2007, I started my flying training there. There were a lot of problems with the airport, with the flying school at the time. But in around 2008, late 2008, I got my license. So
What
after
What
that,
was the procedure of getting your license? Like, what all do you have to do?
It's well, when I got my license, and the procedure now is a lot different because the government fortunately has managed to digitize a lot of things, and so things are a lot smoother now. When I got my, but then there are some other ways where things were easier when I did it. So I would say things were a little more flexible.
Like in what way?
Uh, well, the student pilot license, for example, we could study on our own and give the exam for the student pilot license, and it would be issued to us. Now you have to compulsorily undergo, I think it's 60 hours of ground training before you can even apply for getting a student pilot license, which is okay for for somebody who is learning to fly commercial aircraft. But for somebody who is learning to fly an aircraft once in a while to go as a hobby,
Hmm.
I don't think it's necessary. I mean, as long as you know the stuff, you take whatever exam you need.
Yeah.
If you know the stuff, then you should give the guy a private student pilot license, I feel. Now, the student pilot license concept itself is there in India and a very, very few other places. So, like, this is something that you need to know for learning to fly. So, actually, this is your training starts after you get this license, which really doesn't. I think it doesn't make sense because once you start learning to fly, then in any case you have to give all the DGCA exams, and so why do you need to have something before you even start learning?
Okay.
So that is one of the ways that things have become more difficult. Also, it's under camera, so you can't just say that I've attended 60 hours of. I mean, you have to sit in the class and the camera's on, and you have to be, you have to record the whole thing.
Okay. So this training is basically in class. It's not on
It's
in
in
the
class. Yes,
plane
yes.
and all that.
This
Okay.
is much before you even get anywhere near the cockpit.
Okay.
So after that, after you get your student pilot license, then you have to get something called a radio license. They call it the FRTOL, Flying Radio Telephony Operators License. Then you have to get your medical done. For a private pilot license, you need something called a Class 2 medical. Depending upon your age, you can give it every 1 year or every 5 years. If you're under 40, it's every 5 years. Otherwise, it's every year. Then you have to get your computer number and register with the EGCA site, the government site. And so after all this is complete, then you can start flying.
All right.
So flying is at least 40 hours, at least 20 hours of instructional flying. Well, it's all instructional, but dual flying. That's you have somebody else in the cockpit with you, and another 20 hours of solo flying. I say at least because very few people complete it in 40 hours, unless they have flown earlier with somebody, without, not officially, but they've sat with somebody on the side and then they have done a lot of flying, then maybe you can complete it in 40 hours. Otherwise, normally it takes between about 50 to 60 hours.
So how much time did it take you?
It took me around, I think, little under 50 hours.
Hmm.
But then I had flown microlights earlier, and then I had at least the theory is something that I was comfortable with.
Hmm.
And gliding at the aeronautical theory, as far as this things is concerned, how the aircraft acts in the air and all that, is similar to gliding, which I had to give the exam for my glider pilot's license also. So I had some thing as far as the theory is concerned as well.
So by gliding, you mean jumping off cliffs?
No,
What
no,
kind of gliding is that?
that is paragliding or hang gliding, what you are talking about.
Okay.
That is what I did between 93 and 95.
All right.
Gliding is what you do in Hadapsar. It's like a regular aircraft,
Mhm.
but it does not have an engine. It gets pulled with a winch up to about 1,000 feet or so, and then you release the winch. And then if you find a thermal, then you can stay up. Otherwise, you got to just come down.
All right. So that is what you did after your paragliding thing.
No, I did my gliding first, then I did my
you did
paragliding,
that.
and then I started powered flying. Actually, the gliding, it did help me in some ways, but in some ways it was a problem also because when you're doing powered flying, they tell you that if you're not stabilized on your approach for landing, you should go around. That is, if you're not comfortable that you're going to be able to make it definitely onto the tarmac, just give power and then you just go around for another attempt. Now, because I had done gliding, there was no go around because you didn't have an engine in a glider.
Yeah.
So every landing was final. That's it. You had to make it down no matter what. So it took me a long time to get into this thing that that no, this is not it. I can go around if I'm not completely comfortable. It's not like I have to land,
Yeah.
make every landing perfect. So that was one. I mean, it's just something to compare with glider pilots. Yeah.
Hmm. But was there never any fear? Like you always loved the
No, no,
thrill?
no. There was never any
From
fear.
day one, you loved
At
the
least
thrill.
not in my end. As far as my wife is concerned, we had a lot. We had a lot of arguments over that. Why do you want to do something like this? You got small children. You got to do the education, this, that, and the other. I said, I mean, come on. It's not like I'm doing an adventure sport.
Yeah.
This is something that thousands of people learn all over the year. I mean, every year all over the world.
Yeah.
And it's a very, very structured course. The instruction is also very, very clear. So it's not a big deal. But it took a while for her to get around that. Before I had to give a call every time I went into the aircraft, every time I got out of the aircraft. After a while, she got used to the thing.
By now, it must be like driving a car, right? You-
Well, not quite, but yeah. The thing is, you need to keep your skills fresh. You need to fly regularly. Unfortunately, I don't as much as I should.
Okay.
But
But do they make it compulsory? You have to fly
well,
these many
you
hours?
have to fly at least 5 hours a year or something like that, which is very. I mean, it's practically nothing.
Okay.
I would say that you need to fly at least once in 2 weeks
Okay.
to keep your skills fresh. Particularly the instrument flying skills degrade very fast. So if you're not flying on instruments regularly, then you need to. You need to do some instrument approaches.
What do you mean flying on instruments?
Well, there are something called a visual flight rules and instrument flight rules. There are certain meteorological conditions like a visibility of at least 5 kilometers and a cloud base of at least 1,000 feet and other things like that. So unless these conditions are met, you have to fly on instruments officially, legally. Though you can look out and fly, of course, but still you're supposed to fly on instruments. So for that, there's entire different sort of a training involved, which you rely completely on your instruments, and you wear a visual restricting device in which you can't see outside. You see only your instruments,
Okay.
and you fly as per your instruments.
All right.
So that is basically instrument flying, which is a big deal for most commercial pilots, for all commercial pilots actually. For us, we do mainly what is called visual flight rules. That is, we look out and fly.
Oh, so
So
you're saying all the commercial pilots they can't see out.
they look out. Yes, they do definitely. And as a matter of fact, most landings are done are done manually.
Okay.
But they have to fly. They have to file something called a IFR flight plan. That is under instrument flight rules. Whereas we can file a visual flight plan and we can fly visually.
All right.
So we can also get an instrument pilot license, instrument rating on our license. But in India, it's difficult because you need a class 1 medical, which is a much higher level of medical. You need to pass all the commercial pilots exams. And at my age, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. But you never wanted to become a commercial pilot. It was always just a hobby for you.
Actually, yes, it was a hobby, and I always wanted to. I always wanted to fly. That I knew for sure. As far as uh, flying for an airline was concerned, I never really considered it. I did consider flying joining the Air Force when I was just in college or just outside college. But then I just felt that, if you make that, you look at the economic side of things.
Yeah.
You don't make a whole lot of money when you're in a pilot. So I said, what the hell, I'll just make money and I'll
Then
learn to fly.
I'll
on
blow
my
it up
own.
on the plane. Yeah. But so when did you first buy your first aircraft?
Yeah, so what happened is in 2009, when I finished my flying, I was the only guy who was a private pilot at the time when I was learning to fly. There were other people before me, but when I learned to fly, I was the only guy. After I had finished my training, and then I used to just go maybe once or twice a month and just I'd go to either Karad or Solapur, one of these areas that were the airports which were close by, and come back. That time there were a couple of other people who were learning to fly, and these guys were really go-getters. So when they finished when they got their solo, when they got their licenses, they said ki we are going to go and buy a plane. So then I wanted to also do that, but of course buying a plane on your own was really expensive and not really practical. So once it became a group, then it became a lot more practicable. Then in 2012, we went to one air show in Germany. One of these partners and I to look out for a aircraft, and we had a budget of about maybe 65 lakhs to a crore in mind between four of us. There, when we went, we saw this diamond aircraft. So this guy who was with me, one of our partners of Sky Club, he said, "What about this one?" I said, "Look, yeah, this is way beyond our budget."
How much was it for?
It was at the time 3 crore rupees.
Okay.
So I said, "There's no way that we can afford this." He said, "What the hell? We'll increase the budget or we'll just get more people in. So let's go and talk to the guy." So we went and spoke to the diamond dealer there, and they were from the factory actually. So they said that one of these aircraft has already been sold in India. I was wondering who could have bought this, and not just India, in Pune.
Okay.
So that really piqued our interest. I said, somebody from Pune having bought this aircraft. So then I made, that evening we came back and I made some calls. And then I realized that there was somebody who I knew and who I could contact through somebody else who I knew. So I told this guy, ki, let's go back and speak to this chap. Because those guys there, they were not ready to give any information as to who's bought the aircraft. And, they just said, speak to our Indian dealer.
Yeah.
So we came back and then we met this gentleman called Jagdish Chheda. Now his thing was, he was also another guy who was crazy about flying. He was around 70 at the time when we met him in 2012. He was not medically fit to fly, though he had a license earlier and he had flown earlier. He was depending upon somebody else to fly him, which is why he had put the money down for the aircraft. But then the guy who he was depending to fly him, he became medically unfit.
Okay. And when you say medically unfit, like what do you mean?
He had some heart issues. So
Because it seems like a pretty high bar.
Well, you need to go through those medicals every year, and if you fall below those parameters, then they don't renew your license. I mean, in the sense that you are medically unfit, you cannot fly anymore.
Okay.
So then we approached him and asked him, that can we join you? So he was also in a fix because he had bought this aircraft and he couldn't fly it. So then he was most happy for us to join him. Then the five of us, we formed this organization called the Sky Club, and we contributed the money, and then we imported the aircraft and we started flying. Now that time, to get our ratings for this particular aircraft, we had to go to Switzerland.
Okay.
A place called Lugano.
So
Very
before
beautiful
flying,
place.
you need a rating.
Every aircraft you need to have an endorsement on your aircraft,
Okay.
on their license.
Okay.
And each aircraft has to be flown at least once every 3 months. Every aircraft that is there on your rating. Otherwise, then it depends on how long you've gone without flying. If it's for 3 months more, then you need to go undergo a ground refresher course. If it's more than 6 months, you need to undergo a flight test, etc. I mean,
All right.
yeah. So then we went and did our training there, and then we started flying this aircraft in 2013. And we bought the other one in 2018, I think.
So the first one was a Diamond. Which one?
The single engine Diamond, the DA40. That is, it's from the same company, but that's the one with one engine in front of the cockpit.
This one.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
And then we bought the other the twin engine aircraft, which had one engine on each wing.
All right.
That aircraft is much faster. It can fly higher, it can fly longer, and it has a retractable undercarriage. All in all, it's a much more complex aircraft.
So this DA40, how long can that fly?
The one that we have doesn't have extended range tanks, so I think about 400 nautical miles, say Bangalore from Pune.
Pune
would
to
be,
Bangalore.
Pune to Bangalore is at the outer range, I mean at the maximum range.
Okay.
Because when you're flying, it's not enough to have fuel up to where you're going. You need to have fuel to the point of landing, plus to an alternate, and plus 45 minutes of holding time.
All right.
So you need to plan for all this. And so if you're going to Bangalore, then we need to manage our fuel very, very carefully, and the DA40. Of course, now that we got the 42, we don't do more than about 215 nautical miles. Say Goa is about the limit that we would fly in the DA40 without refueling.
Okay.
So if you wanted to go further south, say I wanted to go to Trivandrum, I go refuel in Goa and then I can go further, or go to Mangalore. Mangalore is also easy, it's not a problem. Go to Mangalore and then refuel and go further.
But when you are flying, say to Trivandrum, do you have to contact all the airport
Oh yeah, yeah.
authorities? Do you have to take prior
Oh
permission?
yes, yes. There's a huge amount of paperwork involved. Um, we have to, of course, file a flight plan. We need to get the permissions from each FIR. Now, India is divided into 5 FIRs. That is Flight Information Region.
Okay.
We come under the Bombay FIR, which to the south it extends a little south of a little north of Mangalore, I think. That is where the FIR boundary is. So if you are flying from one FIR to another FIR, you need to take the clearance from both the FIRs. So that is your clearance. Then if you are taking off from a military base, like for example, if you are
Pune.
taking off from Pune, then there is a separate clearance that we have to take as far as the local authorities are concerned. And then you have to, for every flight that is more than 5 nautical miles from your point of departure, if you're going on a cross-country flight, you need to take a flight plan, of course. And then you need to take something called ADC, that is Air Defense Clearance, from the Military Liaison Unit. So you have to do that. Then you have to fill up all the paperwork as far as your aircraft is concerned, whether it's been checked out, with whether everything is okay, whether the engineer is approved it for flight. And on the day of the flight, you have to again physically you have to call in Pune and find out is it okay to take off. And then after you take off, you have to typically contact Pune and tell them that this is our point of departure, this is our point of this thing, these are estimates, this is our assigned flight route, etc.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
how much time in advance do they need to know? Like how much
Uh,
notice? Say you're flying to Goa
it
next month. Is that good enough?
yeah, no, it's not a matter of months. It's normally it's a day or so.
Oh, it's a day or so. Okay.
Yeah. So you can even take the permission on the same day, unless it is to a military air base like Pune or something like that. Then they like you to contact you at least a day in advance.
Okay.
But say if I wanted to fly from Baramati to Karad, for example, I can just fly with probably an hour's notice. I can file a flight plan. I can get the clearance from Pune, go to Karad, and come back.
Okay.
Not a problem. Yeah.
But do they ever like say this don't come at this time because it's gonna be too crowded?
Not too crowded. In Pune, yes, they'll tell you. But Pune particularly has some times which they don't allow you to fly because they have Air Force flying going on. Like, for example, between 8 and 10, I think, in the morning, they don't allow any aircraft under 35,000 feet. So overflying aircraft are fine.
Okay.
But Pune will not have any civilian movements at that time.
All right.
Helicopter, aircraft, nothing.
And at what height do you fly?
We fly normally, it depends on where we are going. Now, if I'm going to go to, say, Bangalore, then I'll be probably flying at about 10,000 feet or so. If I'm going to, for a shorter distance, say I'm coming into Pune, I'll probably fly at 4,000 feet. Now, all these altitudes are above sea level. So you have to deduct the field elevation from there to see how much you are above the ground. So when I come to Pune, I fly at 4,500 feet, for example. Pune is at 1,700 and something feet, say 2,000 feet. So I'm 2,500 feet above the ground.
All right. Okay. So you get a good view of the.
Yes, as a matter of fact, if you fly much higher up, there's not much to see.
Yeah, it's just the clouds.
Yeah, and not just clouds. Also in India, there's very often there's a lot of haze.
Okay.
So it's really more interesting when you're flying lower.
Yeah.
The problem is when you're flying lower, it's a lot more turbulent because you're closer to the ground, and so the sun heats the Earth's surface unevenly.
Yeah.
So because of the air currents going up and down, it tends to get bumpy sometimes.
And when y'all are wearing these headphones, who are y'all in touch with?
The ATC, whichever that we are in, and normally they ask you to stay in touch with some ATC or the other. Now the problem is, say I'm coming from Bangalore to Pune. At 10,000 feet, we will not be in touch with any ATC for a long distance. I might be in touch with, say, Bidar, for example, when I take off from Bangalore. But after I leave Bidar, there is no other ATC before Pune. So then what I have to do is, before I cross the FIR boundary, I have to let them know. So So in this case, what we do is we call an overflying aircraft. Any overflying aircraft who is on the Bombay frequency or the Pune frequency, on the Pune frequency. So we'll tell them if I'm crossing into the Bombay FIR from Chennai FIR, then I'll ask an overflying traffic. Could be anybody. So what I'll normally do is I'll tune into the frequency, into the Bombay frequency, and when I hear any other aircraft talking to Bombay, I call him and I tell him that I am so and so. Can you please relay to Bombay that I am at this particular point and I'm going to cross the FIR boundary in 10 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever. And this is my squawk, this is my altitude, this is my estimated time of arrival.
Okay.
And normally they will oblige you.
And when you say going to Bangalore or something, how much fuel does that need, and how much does the entire thing like cost you in terms of your different airlines, in terms of your different flights?
The twin engine is obviously a lot more expensive. But fuel is not the biggest cost.
Oh, what is the
The
biggest cost?
maintenance is cost is much higher than the fuel. If you look at purely the fuel cost, it probably cost you as much as a car or less.
Okay.
But if you look and take into consideration the maintenance, because for an aircraft there is some maintenance which has to be done every number of hours of flying time. It is every 50 hours, 100 hours, 200 hours, 300 hours, etc. And there is some which has to be done every year or every 3 months, 6 months, irrespective of whether you've flown for a single minute or not. So, and those parts, there are some parts which just have to be changed. There is no option. It's not like, I haven't touched the aircraft, so why should I change it? It doesn't work that way. You just have to change it. All these parts are imported. All these parts are certified. So it's not like, okay, this is a screw. Yeah, I can just make the screw in my late machine at home and put it.
Yeah.
You cannot do that. It has to be certified. All this logs have to be maintained for any work done on the aircraft. So there's a huge amount of paperwork involved, not just for the flying, but for the maintenance as well. So all this costs a lot of money. For us, the single engine aircraft now costs us about, I think, 8,000 rupees per hour of flying.
Okay.
And the twin costs us, I think, about 15,000, 18,000, something like that per hour. But the twin, when we did our rating on the twin, we had to go to Hyderabad to do it. It was one of the flying schools which had this aircraft, so we didn't have to go overseas this time. At that time, I think they were charging us 45,000.
Okay.
So that's what what a commercial thing would charge. So obviously, because it's our own aircraft and we are just splitting the cost.
Yeah.
Apart from this, we also spend something for. We've got a pilot who will bring the aircraft to us in Pune. If I have to go from Pune, I don't have to drive to Baramati.
Okay.
So I'll ask him to come to Pune with the aircraft and I can go wherever I want. So we have to pay his salaries, plus, like I said, all the paperwork and all that. Then landing charges and ground handling charges are to be paid. Now, each airport has different ground handling charges. If I go into Bombay, for example, I would pay 36,000 rupees as ground handling charges, plus the GST and all that, apart from the landing charges. But if I land in Juhu, there's no ground handling, so I'll probably pay just about 1,000 rupees all told.
Okay. In Juhu, where they have an airstrip there?
Yes,
Okay.
at the Juhu. It's a small airstrip where the Bombay Flying Club operates from, and mainly it's now helicopter traffic.
Okay.
But ours are small aircraft, so we can land there. If in Pune they charge us 6,000 rupees, which is on the lower side compared to a lot of other places. Like Goa, for example, is 18,000. So it depends upon airport to airport.
And how much is the rent, say, in Pune if you wanted to keep your flight? How much would they
In
take?
Pune, they don't have any
They
space.
don't have any
No.
facility that way.
But if we park overnight, I believe they charge us 6,000 rupees.
Okay. And in Baramati, what about
In
Baramati?
Baramati, yeah, now that's the other thing. In 2.5 years ago, we bought over the flying school that we learnt in. We all learnt in Carver Aviation. So it was in financial trouble some time ago. Mark, the person who owned the school, he passed away some years ago. And unfortunately, after that, there was nobody to take care of the school as such. So, when we realized that it was for sale, we just made a bid for it. And 2.5 years ago, we put in the money and we bought out the school. when we bought it out, Carver was doing about 300 hours of flying every month. Now we've consistently been doing about 1200.
Okay.
So yeah, and we have recently bought three more aircraft for the flying school. So now we have three aircraft for the flying club. That's Carver Aviation. One of those aircraft is leased to Carver Aviation. So I'm sorry, three. So three with Sky Club, out of which one aircraft is leased to Carver Aviation. Carver Aviation themselves have, I think, about 10 aircraft now.
All right. So you'll have a flying school there.
Yes.
And what is the how many students are there? How
I
does that go?
think there are on the roster there are about 400 students right now, and about 200 or thereabouts are actually flying. Other guys have either taken a break or they've gone to give their exams, written exams, because commercial flying is a lot of studying.
Okay.
So a lot of kids prefer to go and just finish off their studies and then come back and fly. So they do maybe 50, 70 hours and they go out, give their exams and come back. It really depends. Some people just take a break for a while, for a year or two, because it's an expensive occupation to take up.
Yeah, absolutely.
So because 200 hours, I think we are charging 17,000 an hour or something like that. So the whole package works out to about 40, 45 lakh for a commercial pilot license, which is a lot of money.
Yeah.
Of course, if you get a when you get a job into the airlines, it's you can recover it pretty quickly.
So the flying school in Maharashtra, there's only one in Baramati.
No, there are several flying schools. There is the Bombay Flying Club in Dhulia. Then in Baramati itself, there are two.
Okay.
There is ours. There's a Carver, and then there is another school called Redbird. Redbird is actually a lot bigger than us, and they have flying schools at I think 7 or 8 different locations.
Okay.
Yeah, but they don't use the same aircraft. Most of their aircraft are another type of aircraft. They use something called a Technam, whereas we use Cessnas, which is considered as a sort of the gold standard for flying training.
How is it spelled?
CESSNA. The Cessna 172 is the aircraft that is most commonly used
This
for
one?
flying. Yes.
Okay. So basically, they learn in these.
Everybody learns to fly in the. Well, when I say everybody, I mean 90% of the people all over the world.
Okay.
No matter which aircraft they are flying, even if it's whether it's a space shuttle or whether it's a small aircraft, practically everybody learns on this.
Okay. But why Baramati then of all places? Like, don't people find that to be out of the way? It's not one of the top tier cities.
Well, yes and no. Now we are looking for another location. To answer your question, we looked at Osmanabad. So when we were having this discussion, I suggested Sindhudurg Airport, which is a new airport that has come up about 2 hours driving time from Goa,
Okay.
north of Goa. So I said, if you're going to start another location, why not have it there? It's a lot more fun place to be. So then when we brainstormed over it, there were two big reasons. First of all, the kids who are going to come there, half the time they're going to be partying in Goa rather than coming and, spending time and flying.
Yeah.
The other problem is the weather. Because we are so close to the sea there, for 4 months of the year, flying is going to be unpredictable because there's a lot of rain and clouds and visibility is low, things like that. So we need to go from a commercial standpoint. We need to be at a place where there is minimum disruption because of weather, and there's not really a lot to do.
Yeah.
So
So that is the reason you all picked that as the location.
that's why we are looking at Osmanabad as a second option for us.
Okay. But are people willing to relocate and all of that to study?
Again,
or-
it's a demand and supply thing. Right now, we have a waiting list for flying for I think almost about 100 kids wanting to join. So yes, if we have today, no matter where we were to start, we'd be able to get students. It's not always like that, of course. When there's a glut of students, when there are too many students, then we might have to shut down for a while.
Yeah.
But then Baramati is not quite the hick town that you imagine it to be. So yeah, and it's changed a lot over the last 15 years since I started flying. So I think it's the right combination of being between a big city and a really small town.
Okay. So
Yeah.
your plane's always parked there.
Yes, and we have a big setup out there.
How big is the space?
We have 35 acres at the airport, and right now we've done a huge amount of infrastructure there, like the classrooms and all that. Because apart from the flying school, we also have a engineering school, which was located somewhere else close to the city. Now we've moved that also to the airport itself.
Okay. Are there pictures of the facility available online?
I'm sure they must be
What should I look?
available
What
on
should
the
I look
net.
for?
Carver Aviation, if you just Google it, you'll probably get it. But as far as all the new buildings and all that are concerned, I don't know if the website is updated to
This
show all those yet.
this one?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but this is the old hangar.
All right. So you all got a new hangar as well.
There is
Oh,
a
it's
new
renovated.
hangar, and yeah, most of the other things are the classrooms, and then they have something called English language proficiency, which all pilots need to undergo.
Okay.
They need to give that exam. So we have a separate training facility and a testing facility for that as well. Then we recently started drone flying school.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So the drone flying, is it for people who are into drone gaming, or they use it for their work as terms of
Well, work
shooting?
or pleasure, but mainly people who come for drone training are people who want to use it for commercial activities.
Like photographers and all of that?
Photographers mainly, yes.
Okay. So what
Yeah.
kind of course is that? How long is that course?
It lasts, I think, for about a month or so,
Okay.
and it's not a very difficult thing to.
Yeah, it's like a remote control.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I had a photographer on here and he was telling me about the
Okay.
drones.
Yeah.
But even he told me that even to fly the drone here, he needs to get some approval because
Yes,
of the airport and all of
yes,
that. Yeah.
you do. There are certain areas which the red zone
Like
which
no
are not
fly
allowed
zones.
to fly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Certain areas where you can fly up to a particular altitude, and then there are other areas which you can fly to higher. I'm not completely familiar with the regulations for the drone flying school,
Okay.
but most of the guys who come there are people who are, either whether it's wedding photography
Yeah,
or
yeah,
for
something that way.
filming for movies, things like that.
Okay. And the students that you have here, I'm sure there must be a few of them who are terrified of flying, like the first time they are flying. So, what
If
is
you are
that
terrified
experience?
of flying, I don't think you're going to take this
No,
up
I
as a
think
profession.
it's the first time you're entering it when you're going alone.
Not always. I mean, I loved it from the first second that I flew.
But is that the same attitude all the students share?
Maybe not.
Yeah.
So some just look at it as something to make money.
Okay.
But I find that a lot of those guys don't take it forward to a professional level. So they will learn to fly, but then and it's not always very easy to get a job.
Yeah.
So, okay, now what happens is after you get a commercial pilot license, you need something called airline transport pilot license, which is a higher level than a commercial pilot license also. Now, to get your ATPL, you need 1,500 hours. When you come out as a commercial pilot, you have 200, 250 hours, not more than that. Now, from there to 1,500 hours is a big jump. If you're going to pay your way through, then it's going to be very difficult.
Yeah.
So, most people, what they do is they either go into a commercial, when I say commercial, I mean as a charter pilot or something like that, or into a private company, or maybe for somebody like us, like for example, Sky Club.
Yeah.
Like these guys, these pilots that we've got, we are not paying them airline salaries, but what they are getting is flying experience without having to pay for it. So they'll be with us for maybe a year or two. I think we've already gone through about 5-6 pilots.
Okay.
It's understood. They will come with us. They'll stay with us for about 3 years or so because we pay for their training, their rating on that particular aircraft. And then after that, they will get a job in an airline and they'll go away.
Yeah.
So either they do that or they become flight instructors. So they join us in the flying school, and every hour that they teach gets added up in their logbooks. So once they reach 1,500 hours, then they can and they've given the ATPL exam, then they can go and join an airline.
Okay. So that is what most of them do. Like,
Yes.
after they've reached a
Yeah.
certain level. And is this certification good enough for them to fly international also?
Oh,
Or is
yes, yes.
it's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
there's no like different kind of licenses
No,
for
no,
domestic, international that
no.
way?
The ICAO, that is the, what is the long form of the ICAO? International Civil Aviation Organization. That is got its headquarters in Montreal, and then they have a certain set of regulations, which are pretty much followed by most countries. Though it's an advisory body, it's not something that they can force people into doing.
Yeah.
But most countries, including India, if they are signatories to the ICAO, they will have the same standards. And an ICAO license issued in one country is honored in another country.
Okay.
So if I was to take my Indian license and say go to Europe and say that I want to fly an aircraft here and I want to rent an aircraft there, I can get a local license there based on my Indian license. So I don't have to do anything else separately out there.
Okay.
They will ask the Indian authorities to send confirmation, this guy has come and this guy says that he's got this license. Is it valid?
Yeah.
The Indian authorities, they will give the clearance, and then, of course, whichever place that I fly to, those guys will want to make sure that no matter what the Indian government says, that I can fly.
Yeah. So they're going to test you.
Exactly. So they'll have me do some sorties along with them, and then if they're happy with me, then they'll let me rent the aircraft.
Okay. So have you flown any rented aircraft overseas?
Yeah. I've flown in US, in Switzerland, Italy, uh, then Australia.
Okay.
So I've flown a few places, yeah.
And these are all different planes, not the ones that you've learnt on.
They've
or...
all been either Cessnas or the Diamonds. I've not flown anything else.
Okay, but can you, like, are you allowed to? Or...
I can. Now, this thing about the requirement about having to fly a particular aircraft every 3 months is only in India.
Okay.
If I go to the US and if I have my license, I can fly any aircraft under 5,700 kilos.
Okay.
So I can just, like I said, those people who want to make sure that I can fly the airplane.
Yeah, so everyone is going to make you do those
so it's
sorties
like
and
in
all
India,
that.
you have a driver's license, you have a light vehicle license. You can fly you can drive any light motor vehicle.
Yeah.
But in aircraft, it's not like that, at least in India.
Okay. Yeah. And US, obviously, when you're going in other countries, supposing you're going in Germany and all that, so their airport restrictions and all, you're not familiar with the language, so how challenging
Language,
is that?
India, English is considered as a lingua franca of us, which is why actually they started this thing, because there were some close calls as well as some accidents because of miscommunication from between the ATC and the pilots.
What happened?
There was one, but the biggest accident that was in a place called Tenerife, which there was a miscommunication. But I forget exactly what happened. But the guy was asked to go into the runway, and there was another aircraft which was landing, and both the aircraft crashed, and everybody in both those aircraft died. I think it was almost 500 people.
Okay. Which year was it?
I forget. But if you look it up in the Tenerife accident, aircraft accident, it'll show up.
1977.
Yes. Of course, this was a long time ago, but then there were a lot of...
So there were 2 Boeing 747s.
Yeah.
Okay.
So after that, they realized that there needs to be some sort of a standardization. So they came up with this English language proficiency.
Okay.
Now there are 5 levels of... 6 levels of proficiency between 1 and 6. Now you need to have either a 4, 5 or a 6 to be a pilot. If you have a 4, then you have to give it every 3 years. If you have a 5, you have to give it every 5 years. If you have a 6, you're considered as an expert and you don't have to give it again.
Okay. So what level are you at?
I'm at 6.
You're at 6.
And then if you are a 6, then you can actually, if you undergo some additional training, then you can become a rater or an interlocutor. That means you can actually take other people's exams. So I did that.
Okay.
Mine actually lapsed earlier this month. So I need to go. You have to go undergo a refresher training every year or every 2 years.
So what are these exams like? They're like the IELTS exams?
Actually, so there are 6 different metrics under which they are tested. That is the syntax, vocabulary, fluency, comprehension, etc. Now the thing is that you are supposed to mark the candidate between 1 and 6 for each of these metrics.
Okay.
and your final score is the least one of these metrics. So you are in 6 and everything, and you get a 4 in one of these.
So your score is
you are a
4.
4.
It's not an average,
It's
basically.
not an average.
Okay. So are you a good judge of language? Are
I
you,
like to think so.
but are you like lenient with your marking, or you're pretty strict?
It's they have very very distinct parameters as to what how to judge, which is what they teach you actually when you do the training
Yeah.
for taking these exams. It's a 7-day course and it's pretty intensive.
Okay.
And they teach you what to look out for, and then you're supposed to grade test subjects, and depending upon how you grade, they decide whether to give you your interlocutor or your raters thing. Not everybody makes it.
Yeah. So some of them don't make it just because of their English. Like
No, they don't make it because they're English, and if you're rating, if you're either rating very strictly or you're rating very leniently or you're not consistent,
Okay.
then also you will not get your rater's permit.
All right. Okay. So there are a lot of things taken into
So
consideration.
if you are a level 6 yourself, doesn't always mean that you'll be able to get a rater's certification.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, when you all are teaching people, do you all teach them risk management, like put them in the worst scenario possible and how to get out of it?
Yeah,
Like how do you all simulate those kind of situations?
Mostly in a simulator, because in an aircraft it's a little difficult to do, and it may be dangerous also to do. So when you're in a simulator, you can basically put the student through any situation. So clouds, engine failure, could be anything, radio failure, or communications is saying, or you're lost, a couple of instruments are not working, things like that. You can simulate anything.
So what do you do in case of an engine failure?
Engine failures nowadays actually are extremely rare, because engines are very, very reliable unless you run out of fuel. I mean, you can't really call that an engine failure so much as a fuel exhaustion.
That's a lapse on your part then, yeah.
Like we had one case recently where one student, she was flying from Solapur, I think, she had gone from Pune, she overflew Akkalkot, and she was coming back via Solapur. Up to Solapur, everything was fine. After Solapur, when she was coming back to Baramati, she followed the wrong highway, and she got lost.
Oh, that does happen, even though...
Yes, it happens. It happens.
Okay.
So then she was in radio contact with Baramati. So then they guided her to sing. But then what happened was that we miscalculated. There was some lapse on the person who was guiding her, as well as she was a student actually. You can't really blame her. Of some or the other person who was guiding her, they should have maybe asked her to go back to Solapur and land or something like. But in hindsight, everything is 2020, and so she was. Then finally, they found her. She found her way back actually, and she ran out of fuel, something like 10-12 kilometers short of Baramati.
Okay.
And she landed in the field. And she was fine. I mean.
Oh, she landed in a field. But
Yeah.
wouldn't the fuel indicator keep beeping when it's at a low level?
You're supposed to look at the fuel, but probably because of all these other things,
she probably didn't.
You didn't realize it.
So how different is it, like landing on a field, because you don't have that runway? How do you do that then?
The landing is pretty much the same, like you would land on the runway. But,
Okay.
But there are some things that you do. You look out mainly for electricity lines. Make sure that electricity lines cannot be seen from the air, but you can see poles.
Yeah.
So what you see is if there's a line of poles, obviously there is a wire there. So you stay away from that. Don't land anywhere on a road, because roads normally have one, traffic, and secondly they have electricity lines going on both sides of them.
Yeah.
So a field is probably the safest. Then you look at trees. If there's a lot of wind, then you look at plant. If there are crops, then you can see the way the wind is going, and you always land and take off into the wind. So as far as possible, you land into the wind. If there are crops, if there are no crops, if there are just furrows, then you land into the furrows. So there are some things that you are taught when you are learning to fly, as to what to do in case you have to do an off-field landing.
Okay. And when when that plane was in the field, how did you all get it out of there with no fuel and?
Yeah, well, the aircraft was a write-off. So it
was a write-off?
Yeah, it was. But the main thing is that
The person was
the
safe.
person was fine. Yeah,
But it wasn't salvageable at all.
not really.
Oh, okay. So that's like a huge loss.
Well, they have insurance. We have insurance, so
Okay. So,
of course, though the insurances doesn't cover the entire amount. One, and secondly, it's difficult to get aircraft. Like I was explaining to you,
yeah.
to get a new aircraft in is a long process.
Hmm.
So once an aircraft goes out of the fleet, to get the second one in may take up to a year, 2 years. You never know.
But is there this possibility of importing?
Yes, of course, you can import an aircraft.
Okay.
But like I said, it takes time.
Hmm.
It's a lot easier and a lot faster for a flying school to import an aircraft than for a private individual or a company.
Yeah.
But still, it takes about a year or so.
Hmm. And the one you have, how many seater is it?
They're all four-seater
All
aircraft.
four-seater. So the one you had taken dad on was the
Was a four-seater.
four-seater
That
one.
was the DA-40 that we went to actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we went to Coimbatore. Right?
I think so, yeah. Because I was just going through my phone, I saw a picture of him wearing the
Yeah,
all
that's
of that.
right.
Yeah.
We took off from here. We went to Mangalore. We refueled in Mangalore, and we flew to Coimbatore, and then we went to Kunur, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And were you doing any stunts in the plane?
No.
But are you capable of doing that?
These aircraft, no.
You're not.
No.
But do they teach you like how to go 180? And...
No. They do teach us steep turns, but that is more of an emergency maneuver rather than anything else.
Okay. And I all taught anything about parachutes and all that?
No.
You learned. So worst case scenario to save your life. Like what is the worst case scenario to save your life?
Well, if you have a structural failure, there's not much you can do. But engine failure, you can just probably land in the field or in any open space, really. It's not that. I mean, you'll probably be fine. Like in our this aircraft, the Diamond aircraft, the canopy is, or rather, fuselage is meant to take, I think, some 26 Gs or something like that before it cracks. So,
Okay.
yeah, it's very, very safe. If you have a structural failure, then nothing can help you. But these aircraft also structurally, they are very, very good. They maintained, obviously, they maintain very well. So like that, you have aircraft which are flying all the way from the 1940s, which are still airworthy.
Yeah.
So as long as they are well maintained, really there's no date, final date for the aircraft.
And which countries would you say make the best aircraft? Germany? Like say you are buying your ideal aircraft. Like what will be your ideal aircraft?
I think probably the next distinct series of Diamond.
Okay.
The Diamond 62, which is something that we had considered when we bought the Diamond 42, the twin engine. But
How does the 62 look? Like
it
what are the
looks
difference?
very similar to the 42. It has I think it has the same engines also, but it's a six-seater.
Okay.
But the engines are also tuned better. They go faster. They go higher. Actually, if you
This one.
yes, yeah.
Hmm.
Actually, if you're flying say 3-4 people, the one that we are flying, the DA-42, is probably one of the best aircraft in the world.
The best.
Yeah.
How much does that come for?
I think now it is 12 crores or thereabouts.
Okay.
landed.
And how much of an asset is it? Like say you're selling it in 10 years or something. Is it depreciating a lot or
Not really. The thing is that because the new aircraft prices go up,
yeah.
you can probably sell it for what you bought it for, say 5-6 years later.
Okay. So that's a pretty good thing,
Yeah,
right?
but if you sell it, you have to buy something else.
Yeah, that's true. But you'll always look to upgrade, so you can just make how much you paid for this, and then you can buy a new one.
I don't think we are going to be upgrading from the 42. If anything, we'll just buy another 42.
Okay.
Because it's a marvelous aircraft, and particularly the aircraft that we've got the what do you call it? The options that we've taken on this airplane. Like I flew from here to Bagdogra.
Where is that?
That is what do you say? Bagdogra is the chicken neck of India that we've got. One side we got Bangladesh, and one side Nepal, and then on top we got thing. So Darjeeling, this is the airport that you would go if you had to go to Darjeeling.
Okay.
It's a military base. It was about 5.5 hours of non-stop flying time. So I just did that because I wanted to test my endurance rather than the aircraft endurance. It was very, very tiring.
I can imagine. And do you always have people in your ear when you're doing that?
Not
Not
always.
always,
There are
but
some times when you may not be speaking to anybody for 15-20 minutes at a time, maybe even longer.
Mhm.
But you have to have it on because in
Yeah.
case you get a call from the ATC, you can't just, take off and keep your headset on the side.
And do you always go alone or you have someone
I
with you?
usually have somebody with me.
Okay, just safety or that's
No,
the
just,
recommendation?
no, just, I mean, it's just boring to
It's
fly
boring,
alone, right? So,
yeah.
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 So I mean, the other long flight I had done was to Delhi. When my daughter came back from New Zealand at the height of the COVID, the first wave, and I didn't want her to fly commercial from Bombay, from Delhi airport to Pune airport.
Okay.
So then I went and I picked her up from the Hindon Air Base
In
in Delhi.
in Delhi, okay.
So from Baramati to Delhi and back, it was about 8 hours of flying time, 4 hours each way.
But there was space for bags and all of
There is
that.
space in the twin engine. There is a lot of space. Yeah.
Okay. And the airports are generally cooperative. They don't
Oh yeah,
have
yeah,
an
yeah. We
issue.
are a sort of a quite a novelty actually. When we go to airports, particularly large airports, a lot of times we have people coming in and asking us, see, because most people have started flying because they love to fly.
Yeah.
And in an aircraft, in a big airplane like a 747 or A320 or whatever, once you take off, there's not much to do.
Hmm.
You put it on autopilot and you just sit back in the airplane, flies itself until it's time to land.
Yeah.
All you're doing is managing systems rather than doing the actual flying. So they a lot of times feel they miss this actually stick and rudder flying,
Mm-hmm.
hand
Yeah.
seat of the pants flying as they call it. So when they see somebody like us who's doing it as a hobby flying, so they like to come and talk to us.
So your aircrafts don't have autopilot.
They do, but where's the fun in that?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
unless we are going to long distances, say I'm going to Goa or something like that, then I might for some period of time fly it on the autopilot. If you're flying to a controlled airspace, like I'm coming to Pune, say,
Hmm.
then I usually would come on autopilot. The reason being that they are very particular about what your heading and your altitude is.
Okay.
So if you vary too much from your altitude, even 100 feet up or down, they'll start screaming at you. So then to maintain that, I would depend upon the autopilot. Yeah.
And what kind of screaming is that? Are there any expletives or?
Not, no, no, of course not. I mean, they'll just say to maintain your. The problem is that you're all on the same frequency.
Yeah.
So the guy tells you something like that. Everybody in the air is listening to you. Everybody knows that you got a firing. That's not a very nice feeling.
And what do you think, this is coming from my friend, what do you think is the growth opportunity for private aviation in India?
I would say the biggest problem is the bureaucracy. There's a lot of interest, and a lot of people can afford it today. The problem is it's just too much. It's too difficult. I mean, for us also, because we were so determined, and basically these two partners of mine, Neville Barucha and Prasad Bhatt, these guys are like absolutely, they're like bulldogs after a bone. I mean, when they decided to do it, they said no matter what. They were just not ready to take no for an answer from anybody.
Yeah.
Whether it was Baramati airport or whether it was the Air Force authorities or the DGCA or anybody. They said, "Kyun nahi ho sakta? We want to do it and we are going to do it."
Hmm.
So only with that attitude, actually, Sky Club is come to where it is. Otherwise, we would have never been able to do it.
But what were the issues you all faced in terms of bureaucracy?
See, even the simple thing like coming into Pune, when we used to fly, they said even coming into Pune is a big deal. So these guys said, why? What is the problem? They said, no, we have to take permission from this people, that people. So these guys said, well, no matter what, we'll take the permission. You just tell us what is required and we'll get it done.
Hmm.
Even first time we went to Bombay also, they said, no, Bombay is so difficult to go to. You have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do that. So there was a lot of negativity.
Yeah.
So it was only like I said, that these guys said, no matter what, you just tell us what you need, we'll get it done, but we want to go.
Yeah, so it's nice
That's-
having those kind of people.
I'm telling you, I mean, if it wasn't for these two guys, Sky Club, I wouldn't have been flying like I can today.
Yeah. And what are your plans now? Where are you going to fly next?
I want to do a flight in New Zealand. They have one thing where they get you certified locally. that takes about 4 or 5 days, and then you take off in a sort of a formation, 3, 4 aircraft, and then you go to several places in the South Island.
Okay, so it's like a
Yes,
touristy thing. Yeah.
and so you land sometime a couple of times on pebble beaches or on a sandy beach or on in strips, rough strips, and go there, spend a day there, and then go to the next place. New Zealand, as it is very, very beautiful.
Yeah,
So seeing it from the air, that's something that I'd like to do.
absolutely.
The other thing I'd like to do is a flying safari in Africa. In some places like Kenya and all that, they have this. In South Africa, they have these flying safaris, where again you get certified, and then you fly into one live wildlife park. Then you go to another one, because there are different animals that you see in different areas there.
Yeah.
And I'd gone for a safari a few years ago. The most time-consuming thing is going from one place to the other. So if you can do that, and also if you can fly, say 500-600 feet, you can see a lot of game from up also.
Yeah, but you won't be able to enjoy it because you'll be focusing on the on flying part.
You can
Or
look
you
up.
can.
Yeah, it's not a problem.
Okay, so that'll be pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So then next time probably when you come here, you'll be doing these two things, and
I
then we
hope
can
so.
talk about that.
Hope
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
But yeah, any final words? It was great having you on, and I learned so much more about aircraft that I knew. I probably had 5% of the knowledge I had after this. So yeah.
Well, if you really, anybody can fly if you're interested enough, and if you are well, if you're determined enough, you can do it. It's nothing that it's not rocket science.
Yeah.
So any normal person who wants to fly should be able to can fly. So I feel that anybody out there who is wanting to learn, and don't leave it too late. Sometimes I feel that I started flying too late. Even if you can do just maybe a couple of flights a week, or even 1 or 2 flights a month, over a year or 2 years or whatever, you will get your license. You will get your wings. So if somebody wants to learn to fly, I think they should.
Okay. And what is the best way to register for your flying school? Like, what is the website?
That Carver Aviation, you look it up on the net, you'll be able to get that thing. We are located in Baramati.
Okay.
Baramati is 90 kilometers away, and now the roads are very good. So once you get out of the Hadapsar traffic, it'll probably be another hour and a half or so to get there.
Okay. And do you all have any social media? Instagram?
I believe so. I believe so, yes.
Okay.
But I'm not on that.
Okay, so
for Carver Aviation, I mainly look after the fuel part of it.
Yeah.
So
I'm
as
just
far
saying,
as
if people want to find out more, where
you can
go to the website.
Yeah, go to the website and call, and we have very good staff out there
Okay.
who will be able to give all the information required.
Perfect. I think that sounds good and a nice way to wrap things off. And thank you for making it here.
Thanks for having
Now
me.
you can enjoy your evening.
Yes, I will certainly.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Take care.